welcome to the Hardcore Soft Skills Podcast. This is Yadi Caro. In each episode, we'll learn about a different soft skill and lessons on how to apply them. Soft skills are the non-technical skills that actually make hard skills work and take you to the next level in your career. This episode marks the end of the first season of this podcast. I am extremely amazed at the guests we've had on this show. If you are listening for the first time, I recommend you to check the previous episodes where we learn many skills such as stress management from a mental health expert and former combat pilot. We have learned public speaking from a former TV reporter. We have delved into curiosity as seen by a physicist and a data scientist. We have learned about self-awareness from a top podcaster with a very inspirational story and even discussed pandemic and communications from a former member of the Johns Hopkins team. I am humbled by the talented people we've had, and I'm working hard to continue bringing great experts in the upcoming season. In this episode, we address a very relevant topic as we approach the end of the year: time management. This year, 2020, has made us realize how precious time is, either because we've lost a loved one or because as everything stopped, we found ourselves taking a deep look at the way we manage time or how we spend it with those around us. So for this topic, my guest is Adrian Shepherd. He focuses on consulting with individuals and companies on productivity. His background in education helped him develop the One Byte time management system based entirely around simplicity, which we will talk about today. He is also a contributor for the Huffington Post, Thrive Global, Medium, and others. He is based in Osaka, Japan. In this episode, he shares the value of time, and we review new approaches we can take to look at how we manage time effectively to do what we really want to do. Before we listen to this interview, I want to remind you to visit the website hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com and sign up to our email list. I will be gifting you a guide sharing what we have learned in all of these episodes and much more. Remember, it's hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com. Now, let's listen. Welcome so much to the Hardcore Soft Skills Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Yadira. Thank you so much for having me.
I want to know, because you're located in Japan right now, right? And
yep, that's great.
Where are you? Are you originally from the States, and why are you in Japan?
I'm actually English.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, most people don't know that because they can't tell from my accent. I lost it many years ago. I spent most of my life actually in Asia. Growing up, I was in the Philippines and Thailand. I went to the States for college, but college wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be there. I guess my expectations were just a little bit different. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to come to Japan and see what it's like. Just what the heck. I had a few Japanese friends I made because I was a teacher at the time. I taught English part-time. I thought, you know what the heck kind of thing. I honestly did not expect it to be much more than that. My father was shocked when I told him I was going to come to Japan. He thought, oh gosh, another one of Adrian's harebrained ideas. Yeah, after I graduated, I looked around at the options available to me, and eventually I decided, I'm going to go back to Japan and see what happens. And lo and behold, I'm still here.
In terms of your background, what was your particularly college background, or because you were mentioning that college wasn't what you thought it would be? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, I mean, I went there like most young 18-year-old kids. I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do with my life. I just knew I had to graduate, right? So at my school, there were a lot of psychology courses, and I figured that would be the best way to get my degree because I had a lot of options. If I chose another subject, I was going to be limited with the choices that I had. So it wasn't so much as something I really wanted to learn, although I was a little bit curious. I've always been curious about human nature and people, but I just chose, honestly, the easiest subject available to me at the time. I later on fell in love with Japanese and kind of did that as a minor, although it wasn't official. But But yeah, psychology was what I started with.
And when you came into Japan, did you start changing your mind overall about what you wanted to pursue, or either pursue a business, or how did your career evolve from that start in psychology studies?
Well, it definitely took a few turns here and there along the way. I had a degree in psychology. I really ended up not using that so much. I got into teaching because here in Japan, there's a need for English teachers, just because there's so few of us here. And the opportunities exist. So that's where I started my career. And I did that for a few years. Then I became an entrepreneur because I felt limited by the options available to me through the Japanese companies here. But in 2004, my wife and I were vacationing in Thailand for Christmas, and we were there when the tsunami hit us.
Wow!
And our bungalow imploded in around us. It was a horrifying experience, but
Wow.
we escaped pretty much unscathed, and that gave me a new look on life, as you might imagine. I felt that I had to take more chances, and I really wanted to do something with this gift that I've been given, a chance at life, a second chance at life. So I looked into other businesses and got involved in a few partnerships. Unfortunately, those partnerships caused me a little bit of stress. And I realized quite quickly that I didn't have the skill sets that I needed to succeed in running those businesses. So I looked for answers. And that's really where my journey took a big turn for me. I picked up every book I could find that would give me any hope of succeeding. I listened to podcasts, I listened to audio programs and seminars. I picked things up on eBay and websites, and pretty much everything I get my hands on. One author would introduce me to another author that would introduce me to another author. And, I just amassed a collection of material over time. So that's when I got more into coaching and helping entrepreneurs with the soft skills. But eventually I found that I kept on being pulled towards time. And maybe it's due to the tsunami experience, because when I was underwater there, I knew I had about 30 seconds to live. And, your time slowed down, and I really thought, maybe this is it. And so time became so valuable to me from that point on. I didn't want to waste my own time. And the more I taught entrepreneurs or clients, I found that they weren't using time to their advantage as well as they could do. So, that's really where I am today.
Wow. So you survived that experience, which must have been really extremely difficult kind of, and it's interesting that you mentioned about the focus on time, and because we live, as you know, in a culture where we consider that the more hours we put into things, the more successful we're going to be. And I want to hear from you, since you have worked with different entrepreneurs. What's the biggest kind of misconception about time management and success?
Well, you actually touched on one to begin with, which is that the more time you put in, the better results you get. That is a misconception. Yeah, I understand it. I mean, it's hard to say if one person puts in 8 hours a day and another person puts 14 hours a day, that the 14-hour person is not going to win the race. It's true in a sense, but you also are neglecting a few other factors, and that is they're affecting their health, affecting their mental state. Whereas the person who's only doing 8 hours or 9 hours is able to live a more balanced life, and therefore can, longevity is an issue. You see, you might be able to do 14 hours for a few years, but over time that's going to cost you. And as I've learned, through my studies, of course, there's a limit to how much we can get from our time. After 8 hours, really our productivity starts to suffer. Although we're putting in the time, we're not getting the same return on investment. You've got to think of the ROI. Just like when you put money into something, you get a certain amount back, but it's like it suddenly dips after 8 hours or so. So it's almost like you're driving a car without the tires. Yeah, the car is moving, but it's like grinding against the concrete, and it's getting somewhere, but it's really slow. and you're forgetting about the long-term effects. So that's one big misconception about time. Another misconception, I suppose, would be that it's all about strategies and techniques or tactics. I used to think that myself, actually, because when I got into time management, pretty much every time management program I could get my hands on was based around that concept. However, later on, I went through Brendan Burchard's program and listened to Wake Up Productive, Eben Pagan, I think it was. And I didn't get through all of Eben Pagan's program, but I got the gist of it. And the point is they spend a lot of time talking about health and making sure that your body is, able to perform or operate at optimum levels. And that's something that a lot of old time management experts didn't really talk about that much, because they just talked about how to use the actual time that you have. However, I've learned that you can have all the best strategies in the world, and if your health is suffering, then it's not going to be as effective.
Yeah.
So those are two really big misconceptions there.
Would you describe a little bit about your own approach to time? Because you have the One Byte time management system. Can you describe what is it about?
Well, I found that when I said I went through Eben Pagan's Wake Up Productive program, it's a big program. It's a serious investment of time. And one of my friends, he picked it up as well, and he gave up after 2 days. And I said, why'd you give up? And he said, because I just don't have the time.
Interesting.
That's it.
How ironic, right?
Exactly. That's the big issue. And I found that a lot of programs were really stretching the amount of material they would put in their programs. A long time ago, it could be, maybe a 1-day program or a few hour, 4-hour session or something like that. But they were, being stretched to 2 days, 3 days, 4-day events. And that's okay. I think partly it might have been done because of the monetary return. I hate to say it. If you can say it's a 5-day event or, the most comprehensive program ever created, that's a great marketing tool. And you can say, hey people, it's $500, $700, it's not $50 or $100. You can bump up the prices. I can't say that for sure. These programs do work and they're very, very effective. It's just the amount of time that people have to put into it, and people get disillusioned quite quickly that I can't do all this. There's just too much and it's going to take too long, and they give up. And so I thought, that's just really silly, because, as a teacher, when I taught English in the classroom, the last thing I wanted a student to do was to hate the actual material itself, because then I've lost them. No matter how much I teach, I can't get them back. The first thing I've got to do is get them to enjoy it. And once I've get them to enjoy it, it's like a hook. And then I've got them. Now I can kind of reel them in slowly, just adding little things. And so the same thing is true with time management. If I can give people small things, little bites, little pieces of information that can really, get quick results, they can start to see, hey, I can do this. And that's a really important thing in any venture, that, hey, I can do it, right? Once they've got that, they start believing, hey, this is going to work for me. Because that's the problem with so many things out there in life, is that they try it quickly and it doesn't work for them. Maybe they didn't do it properly, or maybe they didn't do it long enough, but they just think it just doesn't work, and they give up and they move on to the next shiny object. So I wanted somebody to just pick up my program and learn something quick and easy, and it will actually have, results, within a few days or maybe overnight, if they can, just adopt it to their lifestyle. And I thought that eventually, maybe if they go through my program, then they can go into the other programs after that if they want, but start with mine, keep it simple. I just wanted to bring time management down to its core, the key essential components, and then work from there.
Sounds great. And since this show is also all about at least getting people a little bit about a specific skill in each episode, and since we're talking time management, could you share a couple of things that people could start implementing now that most likely will continue pursuing more specific strategies later? But could you share at least a couple of those?
Sure.
That you have applied before?
I'm always happy to. Sure, I'd love to.
Yeah.
One of the ones that I learned many years ago from my mentor, and I don't think he realized that he was teaching me one of the most valuable time management secrets I'd learned. But it it turned out to be one of my most valuable ones anyway for me, because I'm kind of a people person. I want to help. I want to please people. I want to make people happy. So I would often say yes to people when they ask me for their help, for my help, I'm sorry. So I learned that from my mentor. He said, you've got to, sift and sort people. You've got to find out the people that aren't really going to take advantage of you and your time and your energy. And you do that by, and this is back, 25 years ago, so it's some time ago, but he would call it the fax machine. And basically anytime you wanted to reach my mentor, you had to send him a fax. And people hated it. I hated it. I didn't want to do it. And he would always talk to him on the phone. He'd say, okay, Adrian, happy to do it. Just send me a fax. Would I send him a fax? No, I wouldn't. Because I would just be like, well, that's too much time and trouble. I can do it myself.
Yeah.
And so people don't want to do the easiest things, which is sometimes just put things down in writing or in an email or in a fax, because they just can't be bothered. They just want the quick, easy, yes, I'll do it for you thing. They want to get people to take care of their trouble for them. And I thought I tested this out with so many people over the years, and maybe they're listening to this podcast right now and they'll hate me for it. But the truth is that I would do it. I mean, they would say, Adrian, I just need you to make a call to this one person. I'm like, sure, no problem. Happy to do it. Just can you put in an email? And they said, no, it's really easy. I'll give you the telephone number right now. I said, I completely understand, but just put in an email. Just send me an email. Tell me exactly, who you want me to call and what you want me to say. That's all I need. Really simple. They said, no, Adrian, you don't understand. It's really easy. I can tell you right now on the phone. You see, and it just go back and forth.
Yeah.
And they would get frustrated that I was not saying yes to them. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, after I hung up, would I get an email? No, I wouldn't. They just couldn't be bothered. And I would be like, well, I'd just be like, that was that, And lo and behold, they went and did it themselves. And so I would say that a lot of people, some people don't realize that they're taking advantage of other people and their time. They often think that other people are unlimited supply, or that they're just gifted in to be able to finish certain tasks. No, they're not. But you just think they are, and they're too nice to say no. I would say you have to train people. You have to teach them how to appreciate your time. And they may hate you for it, but in a way it's a good thing, because either they'll take the time to write an email, therefore you've got evidence of what they said. And so they, later on, if they claim anything, you can say, hey, I've got it right here. This is what you told me to do. I did exactly what you told me to do, which I think is another reason some people don't like it. Mm. And the other thing is that the people who do take the time, they're serious. This is one of my favorite things that I've used it time and time again. It's remarkable how much it works, really. It is shocking. Yeah. The other thing I would say is I think people have got to take a look at their sleeping habits and their hydration habits and their food habits. And don't get me wrong, I'm not some sort of health nut that pumps iron 6 hours or anything like that. But we really have to understand that our body needs certain nutrition in it. And I mean, you work with people in the Army, and they need some of the people in the Army are the best of the best. And if you talk to them, they'll have a very, very good diet, because they know the importance of what they eat gives them the fuel for the day. Yeah. I think vegetables, of course, are something we've got to add into our diet. More vegetables, whether we like it or not. But I used to hate vegetables myself until I learned that they could be made to taste better. Sleeping 7 hours a day is really what we've got to aim for. You can try and cut corners here and there, but long term, it's just not going to work for you. So just real basic things. And then if I was going to do another, real strategy, I think I would have to do, Pareto's principle on steroids. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but for those listeners who are not, it's the concept that 20% of what we do gets 80% of our results. Yeah. So what we need to do is figure out that 20. But here's what people don't realize, and I learned this from Darren Hardy. He's another time management productivity expert, is that you can reapply Pareto's principle to the 20%. So of the 20% that you do, 4% will equal, I think, 64% of your results. And if you shrink it down even further, 1% of what you do will get you about 51% of your results. So your goal as an entrepreneur, as a doctor, a lawyer, a podcaster, whatever you do, is to figure out what that 1% is. What is that 1% that you're doing that gets you 50% of the results, and make sure you do it well. And that's it. That's really a game changer right there for me.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that particular application, because we always think of the 80-20, but looking at the 1% will certainly make us really truly think of priorities. So I really like that approach. Thank you. I must ask you as well, because you mentioned you're a parent. Do you have any particular advice of anything that they could apply in terms of time management to allow us to spend more time with our children?
That's honestly one of the reasons I do what I do, is because I want parents to be able to spend more time with their kids. But the thing is, we've got to understand that there's two types of time. People think that it's all about quantity time. That hey, I spent 8 hours doing something, right? So let's say I'm at my job and I'm there, and I've worked on this project for 14 hours, and the other person walks in and says, I worked on it only 1 hour. And you're like, wow, you're useless, you're junk. But the key is not actually how much time they spent, but the actual results in what they did during that time. So if you take the 14 hours and you see what they've done versus the person who spent 1 hour, and you go, wait a minute, 14 hours is worthless. Fire him and keep the 1 hour guy, right? Because it's not the amount of time that you spend. So the same thing I would say is with your children, is to, first of all, understand that it's not that you spent 8 hours with your kids or 4 hours with your kids, but that you spent a quality 4 hours with your kids or a quality 2 hours with your kids, because kids appreciate your time. But if you're there, but you're not there, you know what I mean? You're just sitting in the stands, just kind of reading the newspaper, or not nowadays when we read the newspaper, but, checking their iPhone, doing nothing. That's not going to make the kids happy. The kids want to see that the fathers, cheering for them and videotaping them and, really being, involved in their activities. So that's something I think every parent needs to understand, that it's not the amount that they spend, but the quality of the time they spend with them. Now, how can parents spend more time with kids? Honestly, using all the strategies available. But I think if I was going to give, one piece of advice besides the quality versus quantity for parents. So, because if a parent can only spend 1 hour with the kids, they might feel, hey, I'm not doing a good job as a parent. Doesn't make a difference. Just make your kids feel that that's the best hour of their day, that you're giving them their full attention, and kids will appreciate it. They understand. And if you explain to them fairly, hey, I've got to do it. I've got to work hard or something. They understand. Kids are not fragile. They're not weak. They're stronger than we give them credit for. I think I would say, though, for parents, is that you've got to schedule your kids in. We often take time to schedule every work thing in. Every meeting, we schedule it in. We schedule our hair appointments. We schedule our, trips to the dentist or whatever. We've got that on the calendar. We've got that in our, iPad calendar, iCal or whatever it is. I don't use it very often, that one myself. That's why I forgot. But you've got to actually schedule kids' time in there. Put it in. I'm going to spend 2 hours with my kids today. Not like if I have the time. No. That's the wrong way to think of it. Say, hey, I will spend 2 hours with my son on Sunday. I will spend 1 hour with my son. And then, of course, I get it. Things come up. That can't be helped, right? We're not perfect people, and sometimes work intrudes or something comes up that takes us away from that scheduled time we may have with our kids. So you got to go to them and say, hey, look, I want to spend this time with you. This has come up. Explain it to them. Tell them why you have to cancel, and say, look, I'll make it up to you. And then you show them right there on the calendar, look, we have to cancel this time, but I'm going to reschedule you here. Okay. And, come hell or high water, I will be there for that time. And the kids go, they kind of shake their head like, yeah, I'm on his schedule. I'm as important as everything else. That's really important for a kid to see. It seems so insignificant to just show a kid like, hey, look, you're on my calendar. The kids are like, okay, no. They really see, wow, my dad really understands it's important to spend time with me. And he had to cancel today, but he's making it up to me. He's going to take me to Disneyland or, wherever. So
yeah.
That's what I would say.
Thank you. This is very, very good advice. And yes, when I'm hanging out with my kid, and if I look at my phone for a second, he will immediately say something about it. So yes, when it's time dedicated to the kids, it's certainly a time to really truly hang out with them. So yes, this is great advice. I do have,
I
yeah,
give one more thing. One more thing. I would say
yeah.
as well, a great way for parents is to get quality time with the kids is whatever you have your kids studying, learning. For
Hmm.
example, you're having them do taking piano lessons or you're having them do karate. Join them. You take
Yeah.
karate. You take piano lessons. I don't care if you're 40 or 50 or whatever. Just even if you're the worst piano player in the world and you make no progress, your kid will appreciate that you're doing it with them and that you're trying just as hard as they are. And they're not being forced, that you're presenting, you're saying, hey, look, I'm going to be a role model, and hey, I might be bad right now, but I'm going to get better. And that kids really appreciate that. That's what I did with my own son. So
Yeah. So sounds fun. So which class you took, by the way?
well, when he was 4, we did swimming and karate together.
Nice.
When he was 7, no, when he was 8, he was too good at swimming, so I gave up. He started.
I could
I
teach
couldn't think of
you.
any. Yeah, we did karate until he was 10, and then just because of his swimming, we couldn't do karate anymore. So we both changed to aikido. So now we do aikido and swimming. Oh, he does aikido and swimming. I do aikido with him, but he's got a black belt in. He will have a black belt in 2 martial arts in this month. So
Wow.
not bad.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I do have one very last question because I'm
sure.
curious, since you live in Japan, and you have worked with entrepreneurs from all over the world. Do you see any particular difference, if any, on how time management is for people from different countries or cultures? Is there any difference?
Quite a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Quite a lot. And you probably know this maybe even better than I do, working with people in the military and things like that. I think it's really interesting as you travel and you talk to people about time. People do not see time the way everybody you think they do. Here in Japan, perfect example is this concept of nemawashi, which means building the foundations, or roughly translated, I should say. People value you spending the time to get to know them and not being pushy and taking a year or 2 years to really get to know them, so you build up the trust and the belief, and then after that it moves really quickly after that because the foundation is built. But Westerners, we tend to just be like, well, why are we wasting our time? Let's move on.
Yeah,
We don't have time for
yeah.
this. Time is money concept. And so that's a big difference when it's East versus West, is this concept of, foundational time and the building of trust time. Whereas in America, they say we don't have much time and we have to, go, go, go. And that is one of the big, big differences. It is quite frustrating because different cultures see time differently. And so, for example, you live in Germany, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Germans and Japanese tend to view time quite in a similar fashion, but I don't think the Germans are so much into the foundational concept as in Japan and maybe China. China is closer linked to America, I guess, when it comes to doing business. But yeah, Japan values their time, but they put relationship before time.
Yeah.
So that's a really big difference. And Thailand and the Philippines and some places, it can be really infuriating, to be honest. Coming from a Western stance,
Yeah.
we just we don't see why people don't see it our way, and they honestly don't see it. Why are we getting so frustrated?
Hmm.
And it's tough, but we have to understand. We have to appreciate, where we are and who we're dealing with. If we're living in their country, we can't just expect them to change to us. We have to adapt to them, and that's a really important thing that everybody needs to understand. That culture is not just a way of people, living their lives. It's the way they think, the way they view the world, and we don't all see it the same way. So we have to be very patient when it comes to that kind of thing.
I certainly appreciate you giving your time here to be on this podcast, and all the fascinating advice that you have given us. What's the best way, if people want to know more about your system or just want to get in touch with you or get your course? What's the best way to contact you?
Well, I'm usually pretty available over on LinkedIn. If you reach out to me, I'm pretty accessible. Facebook, I'm there too. On LinkedIn, it's I Succeed Book. You can also go to my site, adriansheperd.com. That's Shephed. People often misspell it, so please just be careful there. And honestly, if you just type my name in, you'll find a lot of my articles and links there, and you can just track me down online. So I'm around. You just have to find me.
Great. And I'll put all that information on the show notes as well. So thank you so much again.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. I really appreciate you inviting me on. It's a pleasure to share my ideas and thoughts with your listeners.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Hardcore Soft Skills Podcast. If you like what you've heard, please share this episode with others and leave us a review. Visit hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com and sign up to our email list for resources and plenty of good information. Thank you for listening, and see you next season.